And that there's a problem here when we're talking about security, especially as AI models become more and more capable, we tend to want to over-rely on them. But because we're removing our critical thinking, our analysis, and what makes us human, which is our brain, and what Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, we're removing that from the equation. So it does not become human-AI teaming anymore. But what happens when we defer that cognitive autonomy and the outputs are either nefarious or hallucinated or even contain security risks? If I'm a user, what would I want as a service? Because at the end of the day, we need to build something that people want. And this is YC's whole mantra. If we want to build something that people want to be safe.
You are listening to AI Insights San Francisco by Roan Weigert.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new episode of AI Insights here in San Francisco. Today, I'm Tiffany. We're going to talk today about AI policy and security. Tiffany, thank you so much for having you here.
Hi, Roan. Thank you so much for having me in the AI city. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So, how do you see the interactions between human and AI?
So there's this concept that we talk about called human-AI teaming or human-AI interaction. But really, Roan, it's becoming an over-reliance on AI tools in a lot of cases. So because tools are efficient, they automate processes, humans tend to go the easy route. It's like, okay, I can automate that process. I can get things done at the 10x speed. I can use more time for efficiency and for human creativity. So I rely on AI model. Now, reliance is helpful when automation leads to effectiveness. But where does reliance become a problem? Reliance becomes a problem when we defer our cognitive autonomy and our critical thinking to a machine. Not because the machine could make mistakes, the machine can hallucinate, but because we're removing our critical thinking, our analysis, and what makes us human, which is our brain, and what Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, we're removing that from the equation. So it does not become human-AI teaming anymore. It's a machine in the loop, strictly. And that there's a problem here when we're talking about security, especially as AI models become more and more capable, we tend to want to over-rely on them. There's a willingness there because the outputs are impressive. And the outputs sometimes, or most of the times, are correct. But what happens when we defer that cognitive autonomy and the outputs are either nefarious or hallucinated or even contain security risks? What happens then when we do not evaluate these outputs? And, you can only imagine the downstream consequences. So it is about also a choice architecture. So we were talking a few times about this, you and I, when we talk about, let's say, a use case that's a low-stakes scenario. You wake up in the morning, you want to choose what cereal to eat, right? You are comfortable automating the process, you're late for work, you want an AI model to give you a limited choice architecture to gain time. Now let's take it one step back. I'm in a high-stakes scenario, I'm on a battlefield, and I have an AI model. I want an expanded choice architectures because the risks are higher. But I have less time. I have less space to think because I'm under pressure. So there's this tension between, yes, we need AI to be quick. Yes, we have limited cognition, but at the same time, the risks are higher than ever in situations where we need to be quick, right? So I think this is a tension that we're seeing today. Now, I don't want to just focus on the risks. There's obviously a lot of helpful human-AI interaction, especially when AI, again, is used to optimize productivity and humans are liberated from, mundane tasks, sending emails, scheduling stuff, to focus on creativity, on building, on entrepreneurship. And we're seeing this all over San Francisco. But we really need to strike the balance between over-reliance and automation.
That's over-reliance that you say. It's very important because it's for us, using tools like ChatGPT to automate some like very simple tasks you just described it, send an email or create a post or draft something. What I notice when I'm using it, and it kind of get better and better because it understands better the way that I write things, and I just sometimes I just scan the text and I imagine what it can be on that between, or what the risks can go around that. That's one side of the things that I see. The other things that I see is I start to just upload a lot of documents that I think is not supposed to be there.
Don't do that.
Yeah, so that's very important. How do you see how can people can protect themselves, or not even protect, or could be even how can we reflect the things before we take those actions?
Roan, I think when we talk about security, especially when it comes to AI models, we tend to think that it's technical security measures, it's cybersecurity measures. Yes, for sure, non-negotiable there. But there's a component that's called behavior that we tend to discard totally when we talk about security. And that's exactly what you were just saying. It's like, well, I am taking the action to upload documents because I want effectiveness to increase, but I am compromising my data. And as we know with the AI age, and I'm sure the audience is aware of that, data is gold. Data is fuel. Data is the fuel to your car. It's the fuel to AI models. So you are giving up your private information, your personal identifiable information, and sensitive data that through exfiltration attack or model inversion attacks, bad actor could have access to it, not in a difficult way too. So I do think we have to shift this kind of behavior from a reactive behavior. So basically, after we get hit by a privacy issue or a security attack, this is when we react and we wake up and we're like, oh no, we have to change the way we do things. We have to increase security guardrails. We have to change our culture of dealing with AI security. Well, I invite everyone to look at it from a more of a proactive side. Now, the downsides of that is there's a first mover advantage to this, but also it's a long-term investment. So if you invest in proactive security and proactive privacy, so being mindful as a user, as a builder, what type of data am I training my model on? What type of data I'm ingesting into the model? And then what the outputs are from that model, because the outputs can inform a lot about the privacy realm of a model. Because if the model spills personal identifiable information easily, if you prompt engineer it, then you know that something's wrong and we gotta increase the security guardrails of the model. So it is a long-term investment. You're not gonna see the returns really quick, but I invite people and founders to think about secure by design and privacy frameworks, because at somewhere down the line, the technology is moving at an exponential rate. So that also means that attacks are going to become stealthier and savvier, and the effects from these attacks on users are going to become extremely costly, and they're already really costly. So we don't want to wait for risks or damages to happen and then pay millions of dollars in compliance failures or in losses and reputational costs. We want to be one step ahead. And if not one step ahead, we want to close the gaps with the attackers.
Interesting. That's everything that you're explaining right now. It's very, very well funded, and to get the knowledge that I have right now into all those policies, all those cybersecurity, what is your personal journey to get where you are right now? What did you study? Where are you coming from? I want to know more about this.
Yeah, wow, it's been quite a journey. I was born and raised in Beirut, Lebanon. I'm a proudly Lebanese. I left Lebanon when I was 17 years old after the Beirut blast, which was a big explosion that hit my country. I was lucky to make it out and to leave, and I promised myself that if I were ever to come back home, and if I could come back home, I would bring back with me the building blocks of 3 foundational pillars that we lacked in our home country. And these foundational pillars are technology, security, and leadership. 3 elements that, are essential to build a strong country, a strong state, but even strong institutions. And this is what was my North Star at Stanford during my undergrad and my master's, to really explore this intersection and how I can create ripple effects and impact that will not only resonate from the AI city to Washington, D.C. to Europe, but also invest in the seeds of the cedar of Lebanon back home. So this is what I've been doing. I've been looking at, AI security from both a technical and a policy standpoint. So basically trying to understand, great, we have the technology. AI is evolving at an exponential rate, and we're definitely pro-innovation because it's really disruptive in the best ways, but also in the worst ways. So how can we preserve this great wave of innovation, but at the same time, be ready as much as we can to mitigate and contain what bad actors are doing by misusing AI to get ahead in offensive cyber operations, in military, in disinformation, but also they're attacking AI models. And these models are becoming, first point of attack surface for bad actors. So this is kind of the logic that I kind of operated in with a policy lens of, well, I have users all around the world who are victims of attacks and who are also using this technology for different purposes. We need to think about them as well. Now, going back to Lebanon, Roan, Lebanon is a country that is not part of the AI wave. And it's very difficult to be sitting in San Francisco, where the hub of AI is, and look at my country and be like, we are so far away, not only geographically, but in terms of innovation and security and technology. So this really prompted me to give back. And I recently was assigned the role of AI and security advisor to our Minister of Information Technology and AI in Lebanon, where I'm helping shape our first AI strategy. And for me, this is maybe the first step to give back to my people and to put Lebanon on the map, on the AI map.
That's very inspiring. You're bringing the Lebanon to the map. And I believe you're also able to inspire other people and also inspire women on AI. How you have been doing this, constructing this whole environment, this whole bringing voice to women on the tech space, because it's is different and is oversaturated. It's not saturated. So, and how do you do this? How do you exposure your voice to thousands and thousands of people?
Well, it is a difficult task, but it is worth it because it is difficult. There's an expression I usually like to use is, if you're not at the decision-making table, you're on the menu. And that goes for women in the space, but also individuals and stakeholders that come from countries that don't have the technology, like Lebanon, and that are not on the AI map. So yeah, it's difficult for women to step in, but I decided to bring my folding chair and place it on the table and make that space. Because I really believe that if we want AI's ripple effects to be global means that it reaches different corners of the globe, but also that it entails and encompasses people from all around the world, from all walks of life, from youth to middle-aged people to elderly as well, who are, by the way, the most targeted in AI security and attacks, right? So we tend to forget them there. We also need women, and we need people not only from the engineering side, but from all walks of backgrounds, because AI is transforming transportation, education, healthcare, technology, the way we view the world, philosophy, neuroscience. So we do need that merge and bouquet of people. And I think that also starts with having more women at the table. So I started a few years ago this initiative at Stanford called the AI Policy Case Competition. And that was primarily to create a path, a drawn path, for more young women within Stanford to join the AI movement and the AI policy movement. Because it's very difficult to answer the question of where do I start? The thing is, there's not an answer. The thing is, you have to start somewhere. And sometimes, and especially with AI, the path is not drawn because the technology is not fully drawn, right? We're discovering things as we go. We are building as we go. And I do think that we cannot build this space without strong women who can bring their own folding chairs at the table and speak up. And this is what I've been doing against all odds in the space.
As we see the growth of the internet, the systems, we see the mobile apps coming, and then we have the cloud infrastructure. Every new revolution that we see on those stages, it comes with security problems around this. As the AI, it's a very new technology, just that start to get global scale in the last few years. What examples that you can share with me that you see problems, security problems that is happening right now, or is going to happen that you see this can happen in the future? And how can we protect ourselves, protect our companies, protect our personal life, protect the people around us that you just mentioned about the older people that's highly targeted for those cyber attacks? How can we protect them?
That's a great question. And I think it's one that every institution around the world is grappling with. And the problem is there's no one answer to it. Now, we're seeing institutions rushing towards building, integrating, and deploying AI models because just the word AI is worth billions and billions of dollars today. We're in the heart of the Silicon Valley. VCs are investing into AI companies, especially agentic AI capabilities, etc. So there's a whole buzz around that, and rightfully so, because these models are automating and providing unmatched advantage to companies in this space. Now, that being said, like I mentioned, these models themselves are prime attack surface for bad actors. What does that mean? That means that if I'm a bad actor, I can target critical infrastructure, I can target a healthcare company, but I can also target an AI model. I can do data poisoning. I can poison the model, or I can change the security alignment or the model alignment within the model. So basically, that's called like jailbreaking the model. So, creating a scenario to allow the model to respond in a way that it was not trained to respond. And usually it's a malicious response, right? So that's a type of attack that we're seeing a lot, especially with indirect prompt engineering and even with the personal identifiable information spilling. So that's basically membership inference attacks. It's when we're trying to dig into what the data has in terms of personal information, whether it's social security numbers, mobile phones of individuals. And, the barrier is quite low, I would say. Now, there's that, but there's also a third-party risk and supply chain risk when we talk about AI. So basically, a lot of companies are building on top of large foundation models that are either open source, closed source, or whatever. But the key point here is we are exporting external vulnerabilities into our organizations. Now, obviously, it's very costly for me to build a state-of-the-art foundation model in-house. It means a lot of compute, GPUs, it's very costly, a lot of data, right? But at the same time, if I have to use an outside model, I have to realize that I am bringing in specific vulnerabilities, and I do need to test this foundation model in-house against specific types of attack. And this is what we call penetration testing or red teaming. So it's basically putting on the bad actor hat and saying, okay, if I was a bad actor, how would I hack this model? And that goes into like adaptable threat modeling. So making sure that we understand how hackers and APTs are targeting in real world contexts, right? So that's one. Now, the second one also goes into disinformation and social engineering attacks, which is basically with multimodal AI and transformer models, we're seeing audio, video, and photo scams. So there's this viral trend of Studio Ghibli. I'm sure a lot of people know about this, right? It's great. It's artistic appropriation. But there is an underlying risk there because we're uploading pictures of ourselves, of our loved ones, of our dog, of our family, right?
Right.
And where are these pictures going? They're probably going into a training set for AI models. And then my fear is that we could see in the future voice scams and identity theft based on the big pictures of other people for bad actors to obfuscate their identities, right? Or to scam people into paying money. Now, a huge one that I think is not going away and that AI is exacerbating is phishing attacks, especially with the speed and the scale of writing emails. And you were talking about this, automating emails. It's becoming super easy. I used to take 10 minutes to write a long email. AI can do it for me in less than 3 seconds if I give it the context. But AI can also help me embed a malicious link within that phishing email and hide it, right?
Yep.
So I wouldn't know. So that's also that. And I think the last one is ransomware. And ransomware is a huge problem because I'm not only talking about AI, just typical ransomware. Every organization, especially healthcare and organizations that hold a lot of important data, are getting hit by ransomware attacks. And if they tell you, oh, like we'll pay the ransom, we'll get the data back, nah. Most of the time, even if you pay the ransom, you do not get your data back. And the issue is, even though we do security training for teams and within companies, and even like best practices for individuals specifically, AI is making it really hard to detect scam from reality. So it's really blurring the divide between real world and fake world. And that's really scary.
Yeah, how can you balance both? That's very hard to get into this balance. One thing that you're discussing about how we protect our companies from data. I'm writing a paper that pretty much shows use cases how you can feed your vector database with your information, your company information, but by anonymizing the data, removing all the PII, the personal identifiable information, for have this as a context for and integrate this with the LLMs to get the response, the response you're looking for. This way, you can still use, let's say, a chatbot to retrieve this data, but at least one level of protection, and then you can set up multiple. How deep you can go with that. So that's the paper I'm writing about, and I want to know what other papers and research have been doing on the field right now.
Yeah, so basically there's a lot of research going on, data security and data privacy, very much aligned with the really interesting paper you're writing about. So where I work at the Institute for Security and Technology now as an adjunct cyber and AI policy fellow, we've put out a paper on, the intersection of infrastructure as a service and the abuse of malicious actors of cloud providers, and how, data minimization techniques, federated learning can help share this information amongst trusted cloud providers to be more proactive about cybersecurity and understanding bad actors' patterns within, cloud services, right? So that's one thing. I think we're seeing a lot of, privacy and security by design awakening. And I think that's been happening for a long time. It's an old playbook, but applied to AI. So how can we build secure by design models? How can we embed privacy into models without affecting model performance? Because there's obviously a risk for model performance when we embed these capabilities and these security guardrails. But there's a lot of research going on about, other than threat modeling, how to make our security benchmarks adaptable to the threat landscape. And that's something I'm super interested in because this threat landscape is crazy. It's moving super fast. The models are becoming more and more capable. It's great for us, but it's also great for bad actors because that means they're developing novel techniques at machine speed. So how do we develop benchmarks that are adaptable to the threat landscape? Now, I'm not saying that we can develop benchmarks that will predict the threat landscape 100%, no. But we need to be ready. And that's what's scaring me, operational readiness, because on the one hand, we're using old traditional methods that are really important, but we're still trying to figure out with research, with government, with policies, with big tech, how to navigate the next year and 2 and 20 years. I don't know. And I don't think there's an answer to that. So
You mentioned something that I want to go over and a little bit deeper on the policy making, how the governments in the United States are dealing with this wave of AI right now.
So I'm going to talk to you about the US, but also about the whole world. So there's one thing in common, I think, for several countries and regions around the world. They all see the advantage of AI innovation towards national security. And by national security, I mean the defense space, the cybersecurity space, and protecting critical infrastructure. And I do think that the US is really prioritizing that. The UK just rebranded from AI Safety Institute to the AI Security Institute, which is a strategic move and shows you that the world is really going towards what's the advantage that the technology can bring me, especially in securing our country, securing our citizens, and putting ourselves at an advantage in case geopolitical upheaval happens, because we are living under tectonic plates everywhere around the world in terms of geopolitics. Now, something that I'm concerned about, and it's not limited to the US, it's just the regulatory landscape in general in AI policy, is that there is a bit of a silo between the regulation and the AI policy that's being developed and the technical mitigations that are necessary to protect AI models. So this is how it is right now. We need to build a bridge. So we need to really understand how to build policy that's implementable for AI models, one, and two, that is efficient to target the risks that models can be targeted to and can face themselves, right? So I think this is something that researchers are really working on. And I think there should be more collaboration between public and private sector to bring a common taxonomy of responsible AI. What does responsible AI mean? What does secure AI mean? And how do we bring this to life in a way that's harmony, right? So I think this is obviously very challenging, and rightfully so. The field is moving very fast. And we tend to hear about how policy is lagging behind and regulation is lagging behind and the technology is moving fast, and that policy is stifling innovation. I tend to disagree with that, because it is a natural pace for policy to move slow. Because if you think about it, AI governance is in some ways a bit reactive. We see the innovations from the technology, we see the risks from it, and then we regulate, we mitigate, we write policy, we write standards, right? But technology is moving forward. It's a go, go, go. So there is an inherent change of pace and difference in pace. And I think we should embrace that and we should work around it. And that means building the bridge.
I have been talking to some companies, and they always talk about how can I implement AI policies into my company. So could be enterprises, could be startups. How do you see on the entrepreneurship side, not on the government, but our entrepreneurship side, companies, how can they implement policies, AI policies?
Yeah. So you're touching on an important point, that's compliance, and it's basically complying with current standards and regulations around the world, like GDPR, the EU AI Act, and the OECD frameworks that are voluntary. But it's difficult because of the point that I just mentioned. Sometimes when they say in the framework, we are pushing for explainable AI. Great, that's amazing. What the hell is explainable AI, right? Like if I'm an engineer and I don't know what's happening from input A to output B, because inherently the model is a black box and there's problems around explainability technically, right? How do I implement explainable AI, right? So on paper, it's perfect. But in practice, there are hurdles and it's very costly. But at the same time, it's very important. I'm an AI policy person, so I will definitely always push for startups and companies, SMEs to big tech, to be super proactive about policies, because they're not there just to make your life hard. They're there to make sure that your users are safe and that you don't pay millions and millions of dollars in damages and in reputation costs and you lose your users and then you go bankrupt, right? We don't want to reach that.
Right.
But the issue is, if there are some elements of these frameworks that are not technically feasible to apply, then what do we do? And this is exactly what I was saying. We need to build that bridge. We need to build that common lexicon, that common taxonomy that allows us to build proactive and technically feasible policy into models. And I think this is kind of what keeps me up at night, quite literally, is, how to tell a Series A startup that you need a policy person on your team. I was just now at Besides in San Francisco, and I was talking to an early stage startup, and, I was telling them, I do AI security policy. And they were like, oh, what is that? Like, do we even need that at a startup? I get it. No, I get it. Because they don't see the value of having that yet. But that's what I said. It is reactive. The cyber attack is going to happen. The AI model failure is going to happen. And then we're going to wake up and we're going to be like, oh, it's not a bad dream. It's real. Time to invest in AI security policy. No, we need to build proactiveness in that sense. And this goes back to your question about how startups should do it. They should be proactive. That's it. It's an investment.
It's very interesting. And then how we as a society can help it as engineers, as entrepreneurs, as citizenship as the word. How can we push forward those policies in a governmental level, and also for the companies that are using our data? How can we try to, what things we can do to push it to avoid these problems in the future?
I think we should start by learning more about it and talking about it. Sometimes I'm in rooms and I say AI security policy, and people look at me and they're like, what is that? It's great, because this is where people are going to start piquing interest and looking more into it. That's one. Two, it's about AI literacy programs. And it's not only about learning machine learning and coding and all of that, right? And back end and front end. But it's also about encouraging high schoolers and universities to include AI security courses and programs, not just machine learning, textbook, how do I build a software type of programs. And let me tell you why. Because yes, I'm an ML engineer. Yes, I'm coding. But I also need to put my human hat on and look at this model from a human standpoint and be like, if I'm a user, what would I fear to happen? If I'm a user, what would I want as a service? Because at the end of the day, we need to build something that people want. And this is YC's whole mantra. If we want to build something that people want to be safe, right?
Right.
They just don't only want to be efficient. They want to be safe. So you're telling me how to incentivize startups. YC's slogan, building something that people want. Everyone wants to be safe. And that's number one, right? That's one. Two, at the same time, like if you embed this in education programs, then you're fostering a culture of awareness from the youngest age to the elderly, because everyone is affected by this movement. Whether it's AI innovation, everyone's using ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, etc. But everyone can be a target as well, right? It doesn't discriminate. So I do think education at scale and awareness campaigns that can come from top down, like government programs, and we're working on this with the Lebanese government. Like people don't really know a lot about AI in Lebanon. So I think one of the great initiatives we can do is have a public awareness campaign about what this technology can do for you that's great, but also how you should protect yourself and be aware while using these tools, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's all about AI literacy and education from the bottom to the top.
Very well said. Love it. Do you have anything else you wanna discuss? Because I want, if not, I can close it up with the final questions reference. Do you have anything else you wanna discuss?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk a bit about AI agents and kind of what's happening around that, especially in the security space.
Yeah, so I have been seeing a lot of content about AI agents and have been testing different models, different perspectives. I even saw a whole company with different levels and of finance team, marketing team, like a whole digital company running by agents. And there's a lot of things people can do that with agents. Going back to the same point that we always going back at about how secure is that, or what is the problems this can happen, this automation at scale.
Mm-hmm. Data, data, data. Again and again. That's the song that we keep on singing, I think, especially with agents. Sifting through massive amounts of data, that's one advantage. Now, with multi-agent scenarios, we're also seeing feedback loops being created. So agent A learns, agent B learns from agent A, agent C learns from agent B, and the feedback loop is created. There's automation of different processes in the pipeline, which is amazing and actually super impressive in my opinion. But what happens when there's a fault or a security issue within that pipeline and humans are out of it and they need to intervene to fix it, but they don't know what to fix? What am I looking at? What should I fix? Where did it go wrong? If I cannot get that, if I cannot understand the feedback loop from A to Z, then it's becoming very difficult for us to control the multi-agent scenario. So there's a lot of advantage that comes with that, but also a lot of risks. And I think in the near future, we might see a rise in sophistication with bad actors, whether it's terrorists, whether it's cybersecurity hackers, that are using agents to automate different stages of a cyber operation or of an attack, right? And we're already seeing some sort of automated autonomous weapons on the battlefield doing exactly that, shooting left and right without humans in the loop or very little humans in the loop. Now, we're doing something at Stanford with a team that I lead with a friend of mine, is we're flipping the coin on its tail. What does that mean? We're saying, great, agents can be used for all these nefarious things. Well, let's bring agents on the defensive side. Let's build a multi-agent scenario for diplomacy, for conflict resolution, and understand, if any at all, how agents can help diplomats, politicians, and even negotiators and mediators broker a deal or de-escalate before escalation reaches to the point where invasion happens and war breaks out, right? So we're really trying to leverage the capabilities of data sifting, data analysis from AI, and even novelty, because agents could enhance novelty, right? And speed to do so.
What do you suggest or what do you recommend for people that want to get into AI policy making and AI cybersecurity?
Take the leap. You have to jump with both feet. It's scary. It's still scary every day for me, but this is what keeps me going. I think it is a space that's very mission driven. It's a space that's very difficult. But as I said, because it's difficult, it's worth it. And you are serving the whole world with the work you're doing, because we are really trying to set the next generation of systems that are safe for our children and our grandchildren and set the tone for what AI innovation looks like with security in the front seat. I do want to recommend also a book that really got me into the AI space 3 years ago. It's The Atlas of AI by Kate Crawford. And that book looks at AI not only as a technology, but the humans behind AI and the labor costs that it takes with data labeling and AI training, and trying to understand AI as a whole, not just as a technology, but as an industry, and the energy costs, the climate consequences that comes from that. So I do think this book is an amazing one that brings into perspective what the technology is. And it's more than just a chatbot. It's humans and it's our future.
As we see, the generative AI is coming at global scale even faster now. A lot of image has been created, a lot of videos, music. How does AI policies can protect the artists and the creators that are feeling those AI models?
The answer is I don't know, but I will tell you something. It is a very big bottleneck that we're facing today because you have authors from the 17th and the 16th century that have poured their hearts and their careers into their art that have died for their art, right? Even contemporary artists, all of the artists around the world that have really sacrificed a lot for their music, for their art, for their videos, even for their paintings. And now we're seeing a model that's just able to get inspired or copy that type of style, like the Studio Ghibli style or any other style. If I tell ChatGPT, please write a poem in the style of Edgar Allan Poe, it will do that, right? We don't really understand how it learns from that data, from that specific artist. But what matters is that this artist's life's work is becoming training set for a model to automate. And this is where I would put a guardrail to automation. As a policymaker, I would not be okay with having this type of treasured work, that's people's life work, that's people's albums, people's inspirations and creativity, being used for automation to train AI's own creative space. Now, what we can imagine is, well, instead of training on these creatives and artists' work, maybe AI can develop its own creative capabilities. If people want to draw pictures and Mid-Journey, etc., then AI can do that with its own training sets that are synthetic and maybe not inspired by humans and by artists. Or if AI is generating stuff in the style of Edgar Allan Poe, then there should be some copyright or some creditation or some IP, intellectual property clause that says this is attributed to Edgar Allan Poe, ... like a specific disclaimer or a watermark to say that this was inspired by an artist, because we need to give back the credit to the artist, because it's not AI generated, it's AI inspired by the artist. So that's a very big nuance that we should make.
Do you have a lens on the polarization of the data and how much this can impact on the fake news? And because those informations can lead to very bad scenarios, political speaking, or even damage people's lives with this misuse of the content. Can you just give me a lens of this?
Polarization has been a long-standing issue. It has started with the beginning of civilizations, in ancient Rome, in Athens, etc., until today, right? We're seeing it more and more across the world. And I think that what people think that AI is creating polarization, I would amend it and say that it's amplifying at a scale that's unprecedented the underlying polarization that we have today in the world. And this amplification with the scale and the speed that we've been talking about is extremely dangerous because it's blurring the lines between what type of news is actually factual and real and rooted in good content provenance and what's actually fake news and just, clickbaity and, generated for people to be inflamed by it or to be provoked by it and generate more and more silos. And this is something that, we've been tackling at the Belfer Center at Harvard, where we're saying, great, we cannot stop a model from, amplifying fake news or generating polarization. Maybe we can put security guardrails, but, bad actors can always bypass that. What can we do is make the information ingestion space more proactive. Again, human behavior. And what we built in the last 2 years is that dashboard that's called the Information Quality Dashboard. What that dashboard does is that it takes all the articles from the internet, from different news sources, whether they're conservative, non-conservative, all news sources, and it has specific information quality standards that it tests these articles against. And I worked on developing what these standards should be. So what is information quality? How do we benchmark it? How do we quantify it? Is it transparency? Is it accuracy? Is it sentiment analysis? Is it content provenance, etc.? And the model now knows the definition of these things and can assess whether this piece of news has inflammatory content, has fake content. Obviously, it's not 100% accurate, but it helps people navigate the web with an attrition fact for information to really know, like, what am I taking in? Do I really want to read this? Yes or no? I'm not just going to click on the first piece of information or even take the first piece of information that AI chatbot gives me. I want to be aware of what I'm putting in. It's like your body and when you're eating, right? You have to be aware of what's going in. And your mind does the same thing. And I do think that this goes back to the point on over-reliance that we made. We cannot over-rely on AI models, for the news and the truth that we have to take and live by and make our decisions by. Like you said, we're voting based on what we read, based on what we believe. And we need to hold truth to that. And I do think that's one of the things that we cannot automate. It's who we are. And I think we should hold truth to that.
Amazing. So on this conversation, we have been talking very interesting points regarding the balance between human and AI, the over-reliance on those tools. We talk about agents. We talk about the policymaker, how they are impact the AI infrastructure, and how companies are using some or not using AI policies to create this more safe environment for all of us. So with that being said, thank you so much, Tiffany, for sharing your knowledge. It was very insightful. And I think a lot of people are going to learn from this.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And thank you, guys. And I see you into the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you.